Kim Tae-ho stood in the middle of the giant chamber, feeling very small. The walls stretched up so high he could barely see the top. All around him sat creatures that looked nothing like humans. Some had too many eyes, others had scales that changed colors, and a few looked like they were made of living crystal. This was the Galactic Council, and Kim was the first human to ever stand in this room. The journey here had taken 3 months in humanity's newest ship. Captain Lee Jun-woo had piloted them through space routes that humans had never seen before. Communications Officer Choi Mi-rae had worked day and night to learn the basic council language. But nothing could have prepared Kim for this moment. The High Arbiter spoke, and her voice echoed through the chamber like music made of ice. She was tall and made of what looked like blue crystal. Light moved through her body when she talked. "Human representative, you stand before the council that has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. Kim nodded. He had practiced this moment many times on the ship, but his heart still beat fast. "Your species has achieved faster than light travel," the High Arbiter continued. "This means you are now part of our galaxy's community. You must follow our rules." Around the chamber, other alien representatives watched Kim with interest. Some looked bored, as if they had seen this many times before. A few whispered to each other in languages that sounded like wind or water. Kim had studied the files about other species that had joined the council. There were videos of their representatives standing in this same spot. Most had looked scared. Some had cried. All of them had agreed to whatever the council wanted. "We welcome humanity to the galactic community," the High Arbiter said. "But membership comes with responsibilities. You must pay tribute to maintain peace and order." The word tribute made Kim's stomach feel cold. He knew what was coming next. "Humanity must give 60% of Earth's resources to the Council," the High Arbiter announced. "This includes metals, energy sources, and food production. 40% of your population will serve the greater galactic community in various roles. Your military will be dissolved, and the Council will provide protection." The chamber was quiet except for the soft humming sound some aliens made when they breathed. Kim had expected this. Admiral Park Soo-jin had warned him about the tribute demands. Earth scientists had studied the Council's history. Every species that joined gave up most of their planet and people. It was the price of membership. "These terms are generous," the High Arbiter continued. "Many species give more. The Council allows you to keep 20% of your people on your homeworld to maintain basic functions. 20%. Kim thought about Earth's 8 billion people. That meant 6.5 billion humans would be taken away to work for aliens they had never met. "Your technology will be evaluated and improved by Council standards," the High Arbiter added. "Your culture will be preserved in our databases. Your species will prosper under Council guidance." Kim looked around the chamber again. He saw representatives from dozens of species all sitting in their assigned places. They looked comfortable, well-fed, and completely defeated. Their species had survived by giving up everything that made them who they were. "Do you understand these terms, human representative?" the High Arbiter asked. "I understand," Kim replied. His voice sounded steady, which surprised him. "The Council requires your response immediately. This is how we have always done things. Your compliance ensures peace for everyone." Kim had studied those other species again and again. The pattern was always the same. The Council would make their demands. The species representative would agree right away, usually while shaking or crying. Then ships would arrive at their homeworld within days to collect resources and people. But Kim had also studied something else. He had read about what humans did when someone tried to take their freedom. It never ended well for the ones doing the taking. "I need time to discuss this with my people," Kim said. A sound like static electricity filled the chamber. The aliens were surprised. Kim could see it in their body language, even though they looked nothing like humans. "Time," the High Arbiter repeated. "Other species understand immediately." "Why do you need time?" "Because," Kim said carefully, "this affects every human alive. They deserve to know what you're asking of them." More whispers filled the chamber. Kim caught fragments of alien conversations. Words like unusual and concerning came through the translation device in his ear. The High Arbiter's crystal body flickered with different colors. "Very well. The Council grants you 24 Earth hours to provide your response. Captain Lee Jun-woo will return you to your ship." Kim bowed politely. "Thank you for your consideration." As he walked toward the exit, Kim felt hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Some looked curious. Others seemed worried. A few appeared angry that he had not immediately agreed like everyone else. Captain Lee Jun-woo was waiting outside the chamber. He was a quiet man who had served in Earth's small space navy for 15 years. "How did it go?" he asked as they walked toward their ship. "About as expected," Kim replied. "They want most of our planet and most of our people. And you asked for time." "Yes." Lee Jun-woo was quiet for a moment. "The other species didn't ask for time, did they?" "No, they agreed immediately." "Why do you think that is?" Kim stopped walking and looked back at the council building. It was huge and impressive, designed to make visitors feel small and powerless. Because they were smart enough to be afraid, and were not smart enough? Kim smiled for the first time since arriving. "I guess we'll find out." Communications Officer Choi Mi-rae was waiting for them on the ship. She had been monitoring council communications while Kim was in the chamber. "How much trouble are we in?" she asked. "The kind that starts wars," Kim replied. "Good," Choi said. "I was getting bored." As their ship left the council station, Kim looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, where 8 billion humans were going about their daily lives. They were working, laughing, fighting, loving, and dreaming. In 24 hours, Kim would have to tell the council what humanity thought about giving all of that up. He already knew what the answer would be. The question was whether the council would understand it. Behind them, the council station grew smaller in the distance. But Kim could feel them watching, waiting, wondering what these strange new creatures called humans would do next. They were about to find out. The emergency meeting started before Kim Tae-ho's ship even reached Earth's orbit. President Han Bo-ra sat in the main conference room in Geneva, looking at screens showing world leaders from every continent. Admiral Park Soo-jin was there in person, along with Song Jae-min from Military Strategy and Chief Science Officer Yoon Nari. "They want 60% of everything and 40% of our people." Kim's voice came through the speakers as his ship approached Earth. "Non-negotiable. That's how they've done it for 3,000 years. President Han Bo-ra rubbed her temples. She had been in politics for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. "How many species have agreed to these terms?" "All of them," Kim replied. "Every single one." Admiral Park leaned forward. "What's our military assessment, Song?" Song Jae-min pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's space capabilities. 12 ships hung in the display, looking impressive until you realized what they were up against. "We have our newest fleet ready. 12 vessels including Captain Kang Dong-hyun's heavy cruiser. But Admiral, we're talking about a civilization that has ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia. "Numbers," Admiral Park said quietly. Song touched the display, and new information appeared. Council forces, approximately 50,000 ships across 12 member species. Each ship is estimated to be centuries ahead of our technology. Our entire fleet could be destroyed by any single council vessel. The room went quiet. President Han Bo-ra looked around at the faces on the screens. These were the leaders of 8 billion people, and they all looked like they had just been told they had a terminal illness. "So we surrender," said the President of the European Federation. "We negotiate the best terms we can and hope they're merciful." "What terms?" Admiral Park asked. "They don't negotiate. You heard Kim. 60% of resources, 40% of people. That's it." "Maybe we can buy time," suggested the African Union chairwoman. "Agree now, then work on changing things later." Chief Science Officer Yoon Nari had been quiet, but now she spoke up. "I've been studying the council database that Kim transmitted. There is no later. Once a species submits, it stays submitted, forever." President Han Bo-ra turned to the science officer. "Explain." Yoon pulled up her own displays. "Look at the timeline. Species after species joined the council over 3,000 years. Not one has ever left. Not one has ever renegotiated their terms. They submit completely and permanently." "Maybe because the terms are fair," said the Asian Coalition representative. "Or maybe," Song Jae-min interrupted, "because the council makes sure they can never fight back. Look at this data." Song's display changed to show resource flows. Every species gives up most of their industrial capacity when they join. Their people are scattered across council space. Their military is dissolved. Even if they wanted to rebel later, they couldn't. Admiral Park stood up and walked to the main display. "Let me make this simple. If we say yes, humanity as we know it ends. 60% of Earth becomes a mining operation. 4 out of every 10 humans you know disappear to work for aliens. The rest live under alien rules forever. And if we say no? President Han Bora asked. We probably die, Admiral Park replied. But we die as humans. The room erupted in arguments. Some leaders demanded more time to think. Others wanted to send negotiators back to the council. A few suggested hiding Earth somehow or running away to another galaxy. Captain Kang Dong-hyun's voice came through the communication system from his ship in orbit. Permission to speak, Admiral. Go ahead, Captain. My crew has been talking. We've been looking at the tactical data. Yes, we're outgunned. Yes, we'll probably lose, but we've been human for a long time. We know how to fight when we're outgunned. Song Jaemin looked up from his displays. Captain, this isn't like historical Earth conflicts. These aliens have technology we can barely understand. So did the British when they fought the Zulu. Captain Kang replied. So did the Americans when they fought the Vietnamese. So did the Afghans when they fought everyone. Sometimes the better army loses because they're fighting people who refuse to quit. Yoon Nari was studying something on her personal screen. There's something else, she said. I've been analyzing the Council's historical records. Something strange. Everyone turned to look at her. For a civilization that rules the galaxy, they have remarkably few military engagements in their history. Almost none, actually. Because they're so powerful nobody fights them, Song suggested. Or, Yoon said slowly, because they've never actually had to fight anyone. Think about it. If every species surrenders immediately, the Council never learns how to wage real war. Admiral Park sat down hard. You're saying they're bullies who've never been punched in the face. I'm saying it's possible, Yoon replied. Look at their ship designs. They're built for intimidation and transport, not combat. Look at their tactics. They make demands and wait for surrender. That's not how military powers operate. President Han Bo-ra was quiet for a long moment. Around the world, leaders waited for her decision. Admiral Park, if we fight, what are our chances? Of winning? Almost zero. Of making them regret trying to take our freedom? Much better. Captain Kang, are your people ready for this? Yes, ma'am. We didn't join the space service to make friends with bullies. President Han Bo-ra looked around the room one more time. Any other options? Song Jaemin shook his head. The Council has made it clear. Submit or face consequences. There's no third choice. Actually, said Chief Science Officer Yoon, there might be a third choice, but it's crazy. Everything about this is crazy, President Han Bo-ra replied. What are you thinking? What if we're not the only ones who hate the Council's rules? What if other species are waiting for someone to show them it's possible to say no? Admiral Park looked interested. You think some Council species might rebel? I think, Yoon said carefully, that bullies stay in power because everyone's afraid to be the first one to fight back. But once someone throws the first punch, others might join in. The room was quiet again. Outside, Earth continued turning. Cities full of people who had no idea their entire future was being decided in this room. Kim, President Han Bo-ra called to the approaching ship. You've seen these aliens up close. What's your gut feeling? Kim's voice was clear through the speakers. They're used to winning without fighting. They expect us to be like everyone else. I don't think they know what to do with people who refuse to be reasonable. And you think we should be unreasonable? Ma'am, Kim replied, I think we should be human. President Han Bo-ra stood up. All right. Here's the decision. We tell the Council no. We don't negotiate, we don't compromise, we don't try to buy time. We tell them that humanity doesn't surrender, and we prepare for whatever comes next. Around the world, some leaders nodded. Others looked terrified. All of them knew they had just changed the course of human history. Admiral Park, prepare the fleet. Song, start working on defensive strategies. Yoon, see what you can learn about Council weaknesses. Kim, when you get back to that chamber tomorrow, you give them our answer. And what exactly should I tell them? Kim asked. President Han Bo-ra smiled, and for the first time since this started, she looked like the woman who had led humanity to the stars. Tell them we said no. Kim Tae-ho walked back into the Council chamber exactly 24 hours after he had left. The giant room felt different this time. The alien representatives seemed more relaxed, like they were about to watch a familiar movie they had seen many times before. Captain Lee Jun-woo had dropped him off and was now waiting in orbit with the rest of Earth's diplomatic ship. Communications Officer Choi Mi-rae was monitoring everything from the ship, ready to transmit whatever happened next back to Earth. The High Arbiter's crystal body sparkled with what might have been amusement. Human representative, you have returned precisely on time. This shows good discipline. Kim nodded and walked to the center of the chamber, the same spot where hundreds of other species had stood before him. He wondered if any of them had felt the way he did right now, like he was about to jump off a cliff without knowing. What was at the bottom? The Council is ready to hear humanity's response to our generous terms, the High Arbiter announced. Her voice echoed through the chamber, and the alien representatives shifted forward in their seats. Some were already pulling out devices to record the moment, as if Kim's surrender would be another entry in their historical archives. Kim looked around the chamber one more time. He saw creatures that could probably destroy planets with their thoughts, species that had mastered technologies humans couldn't even understand, beings that had ruled the galaxy since before human civilization existed. But he also saw something else. In their eyes and body language, even across species barriers, he recognized something familiar. They looked bored, like they were going through the motions of something they had done so many times it had become routine. Human representative, the High Arbiter continued. Does humanity accept the Council's terms for membership in the galactic community? The chamber grew quiet. Even the aliens who had been whispering to each other stopped talking. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. The moment when another species would join the long list of those who had given up their freedom for the promise of protection. Kim took a deep breath. He thought about Earth, about the 8 billion humans who were counting on him to speak for them. He thought about President Han Bo-Ra and Admiral Park Soo-jin and all the others who had made this decision. He thought about every human who had ever refused to give up when things looked impossible. No, Kim said clearly. The word hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. For several seconds, nothing moved in the chamber. The alien representatives sat frozen in their seats as if they couldn't quite process what they had just heard. The High Arbiter's crystal body flickered, colors shifting through it like confused thoughts. I apologize, human representative. The translation may have been unclear. Do you accept the Council's terms? No, Kim repeated even more clearly this time. More silence. Then whispers started spreading through the chamber like ripples in a pond. Kim couldn't understand most of the alien languages, but he didn't need to. He could hear the confusion and shock in their voices. The High Arbiter's body was flashing different colors now, a light show of bewilderment. You refuse the Council's generous offer of membership? That's correct, but you must accept. All species accept. This is how it has always been done. Kim almost felt sorry for her. The High Arbiter sounded like a computer that had been given a command it couldn't process. I understand this is unusual, Kim said, but humanity's answer is no. One of the alien representatives, a creature that looked like a giant turtle with too many eyes, stood up from its seat. High Arbiter, perhaps the human doesn't understand the consequences of refusal. The High Arbiter seemed to grab onto this idea like a lifeline. Yes, that must be it. Human representative, let me clarify. Refusal to accept Council terms results in difficulties for your species. What kind of difficulties? Kim asked. Economic isolation, military action if necessary. Your species would face the combined might of 12 galactic civilizations. Kim nodded as if this was perfectly reasonable. I understand. Humanity still says no. The chamber erupted. Alien representatives jumped to their feet, making sounds that ranged from musical to mechanical to purely terrifying. Kim stood in the middle of it all, completely calm, while chaos swirled around him. Through his earpiece, he could hear Choi Mi-rae's voice from the ship. Kim, are you seeing this? The aliens are losing their minds. Some of them look scared. That was interesting. Kim looked more carefully at the alien representatives. Yes, some of them did look scared, but not scared of humanity's 12 ships. They looked scared of something else entirely. The High Arbiter was flashing through colors so fast she looked like a broken rainbow. Silence, she commanded, and the chamber gradually quieted down. Human representative, your response is unprecedented. The Council requires time to consider this development. Of course, Kim said politely. Should I wait here or return to my ship? Return to your ship. The Council will communicate our decision within 6 of your hours. Kim bowed politely and started walking toward the exit. Behind him, the whispers started again, but they sounded different now. Less confused, more worried. Some of the alien representatives were having heated conversations with each other. As Kim reached the chamber doors, he heard one phrase repeated several times in different alien languages. His translation device couldn't handle all of them, but it caught enough. What if others learn of this? Captain Lee Junwoo was waiting for him outside the chamber. How did it go? He asked as they walked quickly toward their ship. I think we just broke something, Kim replied. Their military? No, something worse. Their system. Back on the ship, Communications Officer Choi Mi-rae was monitoring Council transmissions with growing excitement. Kim, you need to hear this. The Council is sending emergency messages to all member species. They're calling this a Category 1 galactic crisis. What's a Category 1 crisis? Captain Lee asked. I'm not sure, Choi replied, but they haven't had one in over 1,000 years. Kim sat down in the observation lounge and looked out at the Council station. It was buzzing with activity now. Ships were arriving and departing constantly. Emergency lights were flashing on the station's hull. Choi, can you decode any more of their transmissions? Some of it. They keep using a word that translates to something like contamination or infection, and they're very worried about something spreading. Spreading? That's what it sounds like. They're worried about our response spreading to other species. Captain Lee sat down next to Kim. You know what this means, don't you? That we're in more trouble than we thought? No, it means the Council is in more trouble than they thought. Think about it. We have 12 ships. They have 50,000. But they're acting like we just set off a bomb in their capital. Kim watched another Council ship speed away from the station, heading toward some distant star system. Because maybe we did. What do you mean? I mean, maybe the only thing keeping their empire together is the idea that resistance is impossible. And maybe we just proved that it's not. Through the ship's communication system, they could hear Admiral Park Soo-jin's voice from Earth. Kim, whatever you did over there, keep doing it. We're detecting massive Council ship movements throughout this sector. They're scrambling like someone just kicked over their anthill. Kim smiled and settled back in his chair. Admiral, I think we just taught the galaxy a new word. What word is that? No. Outside the ship, the Council station continued its frantic activity. But now Kim wasn't worried about what they were planning. He was curious about what other species in the galaxy might be thinking when they heard about humanity's response. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone had said no to the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was listening. The emergency council session had been going on for 4 hours, and the High Arbiter was beginning to crack. Literally, stress fractures were appearing in her crystal body, something that hadn't happened in over a millennium. This is unprecedented, declared Counselor Vextar, a reptilian being whose scales had turned from green to a worried brown. In 3,000 years, no species has ever simply refused our terms. They're primitives, hissed Counselor Zilmoth, whose tentacles writhed with agitation. 12 ships against our 50,000 fleets. They cannot possibly win. Then why? Asked Counselor Morden, whose rocky exterior was grinding with stress. Are we all so concerned? The question hung in the chamber like a toxic gas. None of them wanted to answer it, but they all knew the truth. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbit, Captain Lim Hyejin's stealth reconnaissance ship had been invisible to Council sensors for the past 6 hours. Strategic analyst Oh Min-seok was having the time of his life listening to the Council's panicked communications. This is incredible, Oh whispered to Captain Lim. They're not talking about military strategies or weapon deployments. They're talking about containment. Containment of what? Captain Lim asked. Us. Our idea. They're terrified that other species will hear about what we did. Through his monitoring equipment, O could hear fragments of Council transmissions from across the galaxy. Emergency meetings were being called on dozens of worlds. The word human was being repeated over and over, but not in military contexts. Chief Diplomat Bae Sung-ho was on Earth, working with a team of analysts to decode the patterns they were seeing. What they discovered changed everything. Admiral Park, Bae called through the communication system. I think we've figured out why the Council is so afraid. Admiral Park Soo-jin was in the war room, looking at tactical displays that showed Council fleets moving throughout the galaxy. But they weren't moving toward Earth. They were moving toward Council member worlds. Explain, Admiral Park said. The Council's power isn't based on military strength, Bae said. It's based on the idea that resistance is futile. Every species in their empire believes that fighting the Council is impossible, because no one has ever tried. And now we have. Exactly. But here's the really interesting part. We've been monitoring communications from Council member worlds. 6 different species have sent secret messages to Earth in the past 4 hours. Admiral Park sat up straighter. What kind of messages? Questions. They want to know how we had the courage to say no. They want to know if we think it's possible to win. They want to know if we would help them if they tried to rebel. In the council chamber, the emergency session was getting more heated by the minute. We must make an example of them, Councillor Zilmoth insisted. Destroy their fleet, glass their planet, show the galaxy what happens to those who refuse us, and prove to every species that we rule through terror, the High Arbiter asked. Some of our member worlds are already asking questions. If we respond with genocide, what message does that send? That we are strong, Councillor Vextar said, but his scales were still brown with worry. That we are desperate, Councillor Mordun corrected. Think about it. We've ruled for 3,000 years through the promise of protection and prosperity. If we suddenly start destroying species for saying no, every member world will wonder if they're next. The High Arbiter's fractures were getting worse. The humans have created an impossible situation. If we destroy them, we look like tyrants. If we don't, we look weak. There is a third option, said a new voice. The council turned to look at Councillor Thisera, an ancient being whose species had been among the first to join the council voluntarily. Her voice was soft and wise, and she rarely spoke during meetings. Continue, the High Arbiter said. We negotiate. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several councillors started talking at once, their various communication methods creating a cacophony of sounds. Impossible, Councillor Zilmoth declared. We do not negotiate with primitives. Why not? Thisara asked calmly. What is the worst that could happen? Every species in the galaxy would demand new terms, Councillor Vextar said. Perhaps. Or perhaps they would see that the council is reasonable, that we care about the welfare of all species, not just our own power. Back on the stealth ship, Min Seok was recording everything. Captain, you need to hear this. The council is splitting apart. Some want to attack us, others want to negotiate, and a few are talking about something called voluntary restructuring. What's that mean? I think it means letting species choose their own level of participation in the council, instead of forcing everyone to give up everything. Captain Lim whistled softly. So we didn't just say no to the council, we accidentally started a galactic civil war. On Earth, Kim Yoo-jin was running the Human Intelligence Division's first interstellar operation. Her job was to figure out which alien species might be willing to work with humanity if things went bad. What she found surprised everyone. Admiral, Kim Yoo-jin reported, we've identified at least 12 council member species that have significant resistance movements. They've been quiet for centuries, but they're still there. Resistance to what? To council rule. These aren't species that joined voluntarily and got a good deal. These are conquered peoples who submitted because they thought they had no choice. Admiral Park looked at the data Kim had compiled. Species after species with hidden networks of dissidents, underground cultures trying to preserve their pre-council identities, and secret communications between resistant cells across multiple worlds. How do you know about all this? Because they've been trying to contact us, Kim Yoo-jin said. Ever since word got out about our response to the council, resistance groups across the galaxy have been sending us messages. They want to know if the revolution has finally started. Admiral Park sat back in her chair. And what are we telling them? That depends on what we want this to be. Are we just one stubborn species saying no to bullies? Or are we the spark that lights a fire across the galaxy? In the council chamber, the argument was reaching a breaking point. The High Arbiter had stopped trying to maintain order, and councillors were shouting at each other in a dozen different languages. Finally, Councillor Thisara stood up. Her ancient voice cut through the chaos like a knife through silk. We are afraid, she said simply. The chamber went quiet. For 3,000 years we have ruled through fear and assumption. We assumed that all species would rather live as slaves than die as free beings. The humans have just proved that assumption wrong. They are one species, Councillor Zilmoth protested. Today. But what about tomorrow? What about next year? How many other species are watching right now, wondering if they too could say no? The High Arbiter's crystal body was now covered in fractures, but her voice was steady. What do you suggest? That we discover what the humans really want. Not what we think they should want, but what they actually want. And then we decide if we can live in a galaxy where species have choices. And if we can't, Thaisara was quiet for a long moment. Then we learn why the humans aren't afraid of our 50,000 ships. And we hope we survive the lesson. Outside the council station, Kim Tae-ho's ship continued to orbit peacefully. But across the galaxy, things were beginning to move. On a dozen worlds, resistance groups were dusting off old plans and forgotten dreams. Secret messages were flying between star systems at faster-than-light speeds. The council had spent 3,000 years building an empire based on the idea that freedom was too expensive for most species to afford. Humanity was about to show them what happened when someone decided the price was worth paying. 6 months after Kim Tae-ho said no to the Galactic Council, the galaxy looked very different. Fleet Commander Shin Woo-jin stood on the bridge of humanity's flagship, watching the most unusual sight in galactic history. Surrounding Earth were not just 12 human ships, but over 300 vessels from 15 different species. None of them had been invited by the Council. "Commander," reported Captain Park Gun-woo from his position at the communications station, "we're receiving another request to join the coalition, this time from the Alteran Republic. How many ships?" 47, sir. They're asking permission to bring their entire remaining fleet." Shin looked out at the growing armada around Earth. 6 months ago, he had been preparing for a hopeless last stand against impossible odds. Now he was commanding the largest voluntary military alliance in galactic history. "Permission granted," he said. "Tell them to take position in Sector 7. The transformation had started small. Just days after humanity's refusal, the first alien ship had arrived at Earth. It was a small vessel from the Kepler Mining Guild, carrying Ambassador Young So-young's first interstellar visitors. Captain Young So-young had been as surprised as anyone when the alien ship's captain, a crystalline being named Torvus, had asked for asylum. Asylum from what? Young had asked through translators. "From the Council," Torvus replied. "My people have been mining asteroids for the Council for 800 years. We never chose this life. We were told it was the only way to survive, and now we know that saying no is possible. We want to try." That first defection had triggered an avalanche. Within weeks, ships from across the galaxy were arriving at Earth, not to attack but to join. Species that had submitted to the Council centuries ago were remembering what freedom felt like. Human Intelligence Director Kim Yoo-jin had been tracking the cascade of rebellions across Council space. Her reports read like a revolution and fast forward. 15 species have declared independence from the Council, she reported to Admiral Park Soo-jin. Another 20 are in active rebellion. The Council is losing control of entire sectors. How are they responding? That's the interesting part. They're not. The Council fleets are mostly staying in their home systems. A few have tried to put down rebellions, but they keep running into something they've never dealt with before. Which is species that fight back. The Council spent 3,000 years ruling people who had given up. They don't know how to handle people who refuse to give up. The Council's problems were getting worse by the day. The High Arbiter, her crystal body now held together with energy fields, was trying to hold emergency sessions with fewer and fewer members. 17 species have left the Council entirely, reported Councillor Morden, whose rocky exterior now showed stress fractures of his own. Another 30 have demanded renegotiation of their membership terms. "And our response?" the High Arbiter asked. "We don't have one," admitted Councillor Vexitar. "Our entire system was based on universal compliance. We never developed procedures for handling mass rebellion." Councillor Thaisara, the ancient being who had counseled negotiation, spoke softly from her position. "Perhaps it's time to ask ourselves why so many species want to leave." "Because the humans infected them with their madness," Councillor Zilmoth hissed, his tentacles writhing with frustration. "Or because we never gave them a reason to stay," Thaisara replied. Back at Earth, the coalition was growing beyond anyone's expectations. Captain Park Gun-woo had been promoted to Admiral of Interspecies Relations, a job that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. He spent his days coordinating between species that had never worked together before. "The Andromedans want to contribute their shield technology," he reported to Fleet Commander Shin. "The Vortians are offering their sensor arrays. The former mining guild has enough industrial capacity to build ships for everyone. What do they want in return? Nothing. They just want to be part of something that's not the Council." Shin shook his head in amazement. We broke the biggest empire in galactic history by accident. Did we? I'm starting to think we did exactly what we were supposed to do. The real shock came when the first council species asked to join the human coalition. The message arrived on a heavily encrypted channel, transmitted by Counselor Thesara herself. To the human leadership, the message began, "My species was among the first to join the council 3,000 years ago. We thought we were building something noble. We were wrong. The council has become what we fought against. We formally request to withdraw from the council and join your coalition." Admiral Park read the message 3 times before calling an emergency meeting. "They want to defect. A founding member of the council wants to join us." "It could be a trap," suggested Kim Yoo-jin. "Maybe. But I don't think so. We've been monitoring their internal communications. The council is falling apart from the inside." President Han Bo-ra, joining the meeting via hologram from Geneva, looked thoughtful. "What are they offering?" "Everything. Military technology, industrial capacity, detailed intelligence about council operations. They want to help us transform the galaxy." "And what do they want from us?" Admiral Park smiled. "The same thing everyone else wants. The right to say no." The coalition's first real test came when a council enforcement fleet finally arrived at Earth. 50 ships, led by Counselor Zilmoth himself, demanding that humanity surrender and disperse the illegal gathering around their planet. Fleet Commander Shin met them in space with 300 coalition ships from 23 different species. "This is humanity's final warning," Counselor Zilmoth transmitted. "Surrender immediately or face the consequences." Shin's reply was broadcast across the galaxy on every communication frequency the coalition could access. "Counselor, humanity's position hasn't changed. Our answer is still no. But now we're not the only ones saying it." The standoff lasted for 6 hours. Then one by one, ships from Zilmoth's own fleet began switching sides. Crews that had been forced to serve the council for generations finally had an alternative. By the end of the day, Zilmoth was alone in space with 3 ships and a lot of regrets. "This is impossible," he transmitted, his voice breaking. "The council has ruled for 3,000 years. You cannot simply end that with one word." "We didn't end it," Admiral Jung So-young replied from her position commanding the coalition's diplomatic corps. "We just gave everyone else permission to end it themselves." The final collapse came faster than anyone expected. Within a year of humanity's first no, the Galactic Council controlled only 7 star systems. Most of their former member species had either joined the coalition or declared independence. A few had formed their own alliances. The High Arbiter sent one last message before the council officially dissolved. It was addressed to Kim Tae-ho, the human who had started it all. "Human representative," the message began. "You have destroyed the greatest civilization in galactic history with a single word. I hope you are prepared for the chaos that will follow." Kim's reply was simple. "Your Arbiter, we didn't destroy your civilization. We just reminded everyone that they had a choice. What they do with that choice is up to them. And if they choose violence, war, anarchy, then they'll deal with the consequences. But at least they'll be free to make their own mistakes instead of living under yours." 5 years after the Council's dissolution, the galaxy was indeed more chaotic. There were border disputes, trade wars, and occasional conflicts between species that had been suppressed for centuries. But there was something else too. Innovation. Art. Exploration. Species that had spent millennia in stagnant servitude were suddenly building new technologies, creating new cultures and reaching for new dreams. Fleet Commander Shin, now Admiral of the Galactic Defense Alliance, stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest ship. Around him, the galaxy buzzed with activity. Ships from hundreds of species traveled freely between star systems. Trade flowed along routes that hadn't existed under Council rule. New colonies were being established at the edge of known space. "Any regrets?" asked Captain Park Gunwoo, joining him at the window. "About ending the Council? No, about the mess we made? Sometimes. It was a good mess, though." "Yeah. It was a mess that people chose for themselves." Through the observation window, they could see Earth in the distance, still blue and beautiful. But it was no longer alone. Around it orbited stations and ships from dozens of species, all working together not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The galaxy had learned humanity's word. No had spread from star to star. carried by species who had forgotten they could refuse. But they had also learned something else from humans, how to say yes to freedom. And that, Admiral Shin thought, was worth all the chaos in the galaxy.